as I look at each of those words, I believe that there is a decision that we get to make. And the visual that I have is of a crossroads, that there's some decisions that we get to make as leaders that are crucial, and they have some far-reaching consequences to that decision. And one of my favorite scriptures that talks about what I call a crossroads decisions is Psalm 1. And we're talking about King David. It's talking about the person who delights in the word, meditates on the word, doesn't walk with does not, I should have this memorized. He doesn't walk in the counsel of the wicked, hang out with the scoffers. I mean, and that's actually, interestingly, what I heard Scott say and some of you others, that we've had to be careful who we listen to and the direction that we take. And then this is the part that I love. It says, this person is like a tree planted by streams of water. And I'm thinking this, incredibly bubbling stream that yields its fruit in its season. And in my mind's eye, I see these incredible luscious trees with apples and oranges and mangoes. And I mean, this is this lusciousness, and its leaf does not wither. And all this person does is prosper. We have all this abundance. And I believe that the decisions that we as leaders make at some crossroads are either going to take us down a pathway that is filled with opportunity, growth, aliveness, flourishing, or it's going to lead the other way, which is it's going to be dust or chaff. I'm in western North Dakota. Currently, 50% of North Dakota is in a drought. And so we know what that looks like. I mean, we actually know in our mind what it looks like to have a tumbleweed roll across the road. And those are decisions that you and I get to make on a regular basis. So let's dive in. What might I do to make a positive difference? Let's start with that word, what. What might I do? And I believe that what has to do about one of the key roles that we have as leaders is to cast a compelling future, not only for ourselves, but for those on our teams. For the salespeople on our staff, if they don't have a compelling future about where they're going and what they're doing, they may get up, but they're probably not going to hit their numbers. We think about business leaders who have this dream that they're pursuing. When that dream is lost, then we find that there's no life and there's no energy. So I see that what is very different than why. Some of you know that when my alarm clock didn't work last night. No, that is not true. So when I woke up at 7:05 this morning, the first question I said was, why didn't my alarm clock ring? Because I confess that is my natural tendency. And then I said, Danita, that is not a productive way to think. What you want to know is, what might I do next time around to make certain that my alarm clock works? So the difference between what and why. And there are very different pathways that I takes that down. I believe that what focuses on the future and the why focuses on the past, and that's where the tumbleweeds grow. And we encounter that every day. I had with my sales staffs, their natural thing is to come storming into my office asking, why did shipping mess up again today? Non-productive. It doesn't help us. It doesn't help us grow our business. It doesn't help us strengthen the team. The question that has more power and leads to a more positive future is, shipping messed up today. What might we do to keep the customer happy? What might we do to serve the client? What might we do to make certain that this doesn't happen in the future? So when Hunter asked me the question, what might you do, Danita, to make a positive difference? The first decision that he was calling me to was, what? Are you going to look forward and think about the people in India and what they're dealing with? I mean, for Pete's sake, it's tough here in the United States for COVID-19 lockdown. What about the people in India? What are they dealing with? What is going to be much more productive than, why is the world so screwed up? That does not help us. So I see it as a crossroads. And for me, and it feels like we have kind of some stumbling, when I talk with people, there are some stumbling blocks to looking at the future and what we might do. One is exactly what I did this morning when I woke up, which is, it's very natural for me to ask why. You know, and the research tells us that there are certain personality types that are more, that's their first question is why. And I would submit that culturally, the first question that we ask is why, so that we can find someone to blame. That's part of the culture that we live in. So here's Hunter walked me through an exercise that some of you may have worked with on your coaches. And I think it's helpful for us to consider at this point. So let's imagine 10 years from now, and we're all sitting around a fireplace. Let's do an outdoor fireplace. I've invited all of you to North Dakota. We have this huge outdoor fireplace, and we're all sitting down and we're talking and we're looking back to 2021, and we're telling stories. And I submit that there are going to be two types of stories. There's going to be one type of story that says, you know what? My team, they were so engaged, and we were able they came up with creative ideas, and we introduced some new products and some new ideas, and we went after some new markets, and we became so radically relevant to our database that we just took off. That's one type of story. And then there's another type of story that said, wow, man, the world was just so confusing and things were so topsy-turvy. And we just, I don't know, we felt stuck and we didn't know what to do and where to go. And the question for us as senior leaders, the question for us as parents, as grandparents, as aunts, as uncles, is which story do we want to be telling around the campfire? Which story do we want to be known for? And I believe that embedded in this, what might I do to make a positive difference? That one of the first bold decisions that we get to make as leaders is, are we going to choose what or why? And that leads to one of my 5 predictions for a post-COVID world that I shared with the team in India and is helpful for us, is that those who can cast a positive, compelling vision for the future, those leaders will be wildly successful. And it's a decision that we get to make. So here's my roundtable question for us. I have 2 questions. One is, where do you see the why thinking? Because it's helpful for us to be able to spot it. Where do we see the why thinking? And then the next question is, what are some things that we can do with our teams and those around us to help us to be looking to cast that positive future? So that's our discussion.
Yeah, I think that deciding that you are going to, move forward and deciding on a what are you going to do, and not look back on, what happened and ask why, and just not even let that thinking, influence you, but looking forward and talking and verbalizing and articulating that to the people that you work with and interact with, that you are looking forward, that you are going to continue to move your business forward, stay safe medically until we're totally through this thing. But we are going to get through this, and having that mindset and really, have faith in that and always exude that in your personality and conversations. And that takes effort. But that's what I look to.
Mm-hmm. Communicate the positive outcome. Absolutely. Good.
And so I'll jump in with a couple of comments. One is that, as Christians, we're charged with sharing the reason for our hope and our joy. And we're asked, to pray for our enemies. And regardless of what side of the political spectrum you're on, the country needs healing. And I remember when I was a young man, a long time ago, one of my spiritual advisors was trying to help me. And I was saying, look, I have a hard time praying for my enemies. And he says, well, Frank, take it in small steps. Try this prayer. He says, dearest Lord, I pray that my enemies could be with you in heaven. Please take them today. I can do that prayer, so I'm working on it. I'm not a saint. I'm a Christian, but I'm working on it.
Frank, to dovetail into that, the woman from Latvia who I mentored with at Bloomington Assembly of God for 5 years back in '85, who we named our daughter Lydia after, she always had a saying, the Lord bless you, because she figured whether they're an enemy or a friend, that's the best thing she could ask God to do for people.
I love that.
I mean, I think a long time ago, I had heard from someone, and I can't remember where, but there's sort of this whole why me, right? Or why this good person, or why this? Why is this happening? And it's sort of turning around and saying, why not me, right? I mean, we all fall under this cradle of sin, and so I think it is about sharing around you, and I still get to benefit my littles on a regular basis. I hope so. It's kind of sharing that expression and saying, okay, let's not focus on that, right? God has reasons for everything. Let's talk about, what do we need to change? What do we need to do differently? How do we need to look at this? And those other things about, it's not, God has a reason. I mean, there's a reason for everything, right? And so I love that idea.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference about how we as leaders at our crossroads, and the individuals that we're talking with, inviting them to make a crossroads decision that is going to be more productive in the long run, is going to lead to flourishing. So let's look at the second word. What might I do to make a positive difference? Might is about creative innovation. And are we going to stimulate opportunities and possibilities, or are we going to squelch ideas? What might I do? And if you hear a little noise, it sounds like my husband has some visitors that are coming. So we have the word might. Might is a secret sauce word used by top innovators. Might. They say that when they've researched the word might, that what it does for us is it stimulates opportunity. And then the moment we get to see opportunity, it's like our brain, our neurotransmitters, they light up and they come up with opportunities. So what might I do? And I would put that in contrast to what should we do. And we can feel the energy. For those of us in sales, I'll use an analogy of a pipeline. On one route, we have, wow, your pipeline is really full. What might we do to clean that up and make certain that these are accurate and are going to move to close? Or your pipeline is really weak. What might we do to get more people in it? That has a completely different feel and energy than your pipeline is really weak. You should really beef it up. There's a very different energy, and there's a different impact that's on our brain. The word might sparks options and innovation. I think about from a sales management and a sales leadership perspective, I'd have salespeople kind of, marching in, and they would say, well, the shipping clerk messed up today. We should fire them. This sounds like you may have had this salesperson on your staff too. what a much different conversation, and this is where I would start to focus them, is shipping clerk messed up. What might we do? And then what might we do to solve the problem in the future? And then I don't know, the poor people who worked for me, I would actually have them go back and I would say, come up with 3 options and then come back and tell me about the problem along with your possible 3 options, and we'll come up with a solution. So the word might invites us to consider options, and it releases our creative juices so that we can develop strategies that we haven't thought of before. And in the middle of the disruption that we're facing now, and that I believe will only accelerate, we're going to need those creative options. We're going to need innovation. We're going to need ideas. We're going to need to tap into our entire team to see how they're doing it and what types of things that they can do. So that leads to my second prediction for the people in India, which was creative innovation will spark strategic problem solving. It's that creative innovation that's going to help us address the problems that we're facing personally, the problems and challenges that our people are facing, and the problems that our businesses are facing. So, a quick discussion. When the word might, have you heard before that that's the secret sauce of top innovators? If yes, how do you do it? How do you use it? What are some stories that you've had where you've shown the power of options and innovations?
Danita, I would have to admit I really haven't looked at the word might like that, but I like it. And to your pipeline question, being a lifelong salesperson,
Yes.
The answer to almost every sales problem is getting a bigger, more accurate pipeline. Are the clients that you're working with a fit? In selling a business, I am never going to convince somebody to sell. They are either ready or they are not.
They are not.
And it's my job to get out and find someone who is ready or create a relationship so when they are, they think of Dan.
Yes.
And I believe that is true whether you're selling nuts and bolts or businesses or insurance or pick on Paul, accounting.
Absolutely.
Right? So,
Yes.
and take that further than sales. You have a problem. Let's get outside ourselves and throw it on the whiteboard and start problem solving.
So true. One of the businesses, I bought a snowmobile sleigh manufacturing company. At the beginning, I bought it in the summer, and then that winter was the first year of El Nino. And the snow didn't come for 3 years. I don't know, any snowmobilers, there was no snow for 3 years. And after playing the blame game for 3 years, I had another coach who challenged me with the same question. Danita, what might you do to get the results that you want? And in that word might, I wrote 10 things. I started getting outside myself, exactly like you said, Dan. I started getting outside, and I pulled in a team to brainstorm with me. We got 10 ideas on. The 10th idea was sell the business. I said, that's what I want. I'm sick and tired of it. And I had the business sold in 90 days. All because the might invited me to get outside myself. The other thing that happened with that question is, what might I? And Dan, I heard you say that also. What might I do? And the decision that we have, and as we're coaching and leading others, is to invite them to look at what they might do versus pointing the finger at others and what they might do to solve my problem. And when I think about it, I think about it with this as an analogy. So when we start asking questions about what might I do to make it a positive impact, and when we hit that obstacle, what are some possible solutions? And we're not getting that new market as much as we want, but what might we do to impact it? And I believe that the more that we go, what might I, and we take that ownership mindset, that we expand our capacity, we expand our ingenuity, we expand our humanness. And then when we start doing, in our research of over 2 million salespeople, what we find is that 60% of sales professionals, which I believe is reflective of our culture, 60% are going, when they hit that obstacle, they're looking at who to blame. Well, the competition was too tough. The marketing department, they don't have their act together. Our pricing, it's too high, it's too low. The economy, it's too good, it's too bad. And then even my favorite one, the reason I'm not getting my results is because of my rotten sales manager. We hear that all the time. Okay. I am sure all of us have worked for rotten sales managers and rotten leaders, and we've still been successful in achieving our goals. So when I think of what might I, and that ownership mindset, the ownership mindset allows us to do this, to facilitate this with our people and as our businesses. And that entitlement mindset, where we're looking at who to blame, it shrinks us. It limits us. It robs us of our humanity. When I'm sure that many times we have been asked the question, this is a very old one. What is like fingernails on a chalkboard to you? I invariably answer complaining and finger pointing. And as I think about why, it's because it robs people of their humanity. And isn't that what Satan wants? He wants to rob people of their creativity, of their innovation, of their opportunity to think forward. So as leaders, we get an opportunity in those that are in our sphere of influence, where we know statistically that 60% of them are going to be pointing fingers. We get the awesome opportunity to start to shift their perspective and to have ownership thinking. If we're in a coaching, what might you do to move the ball forward? What might you do to get the results that you're looking for? I think back to my snowmobile manufacturing story. One of the things that I was doing for 3 years is I was pointing the finger out at someone else and expecting them to solve the problem. Now, I have a couple of favorite excuses. My favorite is actually my husband. I feel like I can blame anything on my husband. So I've learned to recognize that in myself. But during that time when I was losing money and this was a failure and there was no snow because of El Nino, I blamed the customers because they didn't buy any product from me. At the time, there was a trade war going on. So any clients I had in Canada weren't buying from me. I blamed the weather. And I blamed God. Because he's the one who makes it snow anyway, isn't it? And so when my coach asked me the question, what might you do, Danita? What might you do, Danita, to get a different result? It was literally, I remember, it was like someone took a cold bucket of water, poured it over me, and the scales, I just saw the world differently. And that's the opportunity that we have with the people that we coach and the people that are in our sphere of influence. So that leads to my third prediction, which is that those character-driven leaders, because I believe an ownership mindset is ultimately about character, that character-driven leaders who can inspire an ownership mindset in their teams will drive the capacity of themselves, their teams, and their business. They will be amazed at what their team members can come up with. So I know that we as leaders, that we have each had our own aha about when we need to take ownership. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in the room. People who are going to join a group like this they know the power of having an ownership mindset. And so as we open up the microphones, I'd like to hear from you about what's been the power that you've seen with what might I do, either with yourself or your team. Who's got something to share with us?
My son has had a lot of questions through, COVID and, the social distancing and social unrest and politics. And, one of the things I kind of talked to him is, part of the problem is a lot of these people are victims, or they're acting like victims. And it's kind of funny. I just said, kept asking me questions. Finally, one day I just said, just understand life's not fair. So the sooner you get over it, the better you're going to be.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a simple analogy, but you sometimes you're going to do all the right things and COVID happens, so yeah, it's just, you just have to think outside the box sometime. And I think a lot of businesses are doing that to some of your points. I know Dan had mentioned some businesses that are doing well and some other people.
Yeah.
There's some businesses, there's really not a whole lot they can do.
Yeah.
So,
it's a major pivot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. I have a virtual assistant in South Africa, and was talking with her yesterday about COVID and what's happening. And she said, there's a real dialogue going on. She goes, I don't know if South Africa will ever get the vaccine. And what they're hearing, and who knows if this is true or not, it could be fake news, but what they're hearing is that the wealthy companies have bought up all the vaccine and have stockpiled it to have 3 times more vaccine than they need. And that the poorer countries won't get any. And I thought, wow. Even though the vaccine is controversial, we should be grateful. We should be grateful that we even get to have the dialogue about the vaccine. So it was a new perspective for me that I don't necessarily think about what's happening in the rest of the world with that. So good. Thank you. Thank you. Very helpful. And it's tough for our young people. We have been through some ups and downs. We've been through 9/11. We've been through 2008. This is all new for them. So, Scott.
I really like the what and the how. I think sometimes when bad things happen, I always want to react by saying, why is this happening to me? Why is God allowing this to happen to me? Instead of responding and saying, asking, dear Lord, what am I to learn from this? And your example of the why being in the past and the what being in the future, I've never heard that before, but you're right on with that. Mm-hmm. And I always think that why is defending a previous decision. So it's asking somebody to justify a previous decision, and it always causes somebody to get defensive because they have to justify a previous decision. When I go and pump gas, I always, when the pump shuts off, I always hit it 3 times. And why do I do that? Well, because my grandfather taught me how to pump gas, and that's what he did. And people can say, that's not the pumps aren't, the same or anything. Well, then ask me, what might you do to not do that anymore? Well, first it starts with our beliefs. So what might we do is focus on our attitude, focus on our optimism, and really look for all of the opportunities and the possibilities, and not get doom and gloom about, woe is me, why is this happening to me? And it just starts, I really, really believe, with our belief system and our attitude and our outlook, and to be positive every day. And to just say, dear Lord, what am I to learn from this? And I know that he'll bring it to me today. Whether or not I see it is an obligation up to me. Whether I see it, I need to be looking for it. But if I'm not looking for it, I'll never see it. And if I don't trust in him, it'll never arrive, period.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So true. I might have to start coming to these all the time. This is really good.
We would love to have you anytime. We're getting close to the top of the hour. I can keep the line open. I know some people have hard stops at 9, but we'll keep it on as long as we need to.
Well, I would like to wrap up. I just want to make certain, Frank, did everybody get the handout?
I believe that they were sent the handout, yes.
Great. Excellent. Because I've listed all 5 predictions. I've listed those. I also want to give you a heads up that probably in the next 30 days, I'm going to be having a an article series that's going to dive in deeper into each of these 5 predictions, each of these 5 bold decisions that we as leaders can make. And as part of that, I'm also looking to do some practical implementation. What does this, taking this key leadership decision, what does that look like? So keep watch for that. I do want to close with my last bold decision and bold prediction is that those who contribute to others will see ordinary work that is transformed into extraordinary work as we serve others. And the concept is, as Scott had talked about early on, is this division that we have between the secular world and the sacred world. And in fact, scripture calls us to Ovadah, where our work is worship. It's all God's plate. And so I'd like to close us with how I closed out Millennials Matter, which is a challenge. It's a challenge for me as we're moving forward. And here's the quick story behind it. When I was asked to give the graduation speech at high school, and it was on Saturday, we did the practice run. I got done with my practice run, and the superintendent, Pearlie, came up to me and he said, Danita, I think you should cut that prayer from St. Francis of Assisi off your speech. I says, why? He says, well, you know, St. Francis wasn't successful. He's just a poor monk. And your job at a graduation speech is to inspire people to greatness. And so I had a kind of an interesting crossroads to make as a 17-year-old. And I decided Pearlie was wrong. And this, I believe, is a call for all of us as leaders, that in our sphere of influence, that we will be about making a positive impact. And so I'll close with this. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Danita, that was just fabulous. That was fabulous. You've inspired me and all of us here, so much so that I'm going to go forward now by my given name, which is Francis, and I'll be using that forward. But it's been wonderful having you here. I really appreciate it. We're at the top of the hour. I'm going to end us in a prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing Danita to us today. Thank you for her inspiration and guidance. Please watch over all of us. Watch over our families. Give us the wisdom that we need to discern your will. Give us the strength to be your hands in the marketplace to share your message to those that we come encounter with. We ask these things in your name. Amen.